Good morning, everyone. Welcome back
Morning.
to the Huddle. It's Tuesday. I couldn't remember what day it was for a second because it feels like it's already Thursday. Some breaking news overnight, actually. After 38 days, Republicans appear to be sort of throwing their hands up on DHS funding. There is a new possible deal to fund DHS, except immigration enforcement. This was, I'll remind you, an idea that Democrats put forward before this partial shutdown even occurred. In that sense, sort of a cave for Republicans. We're going to talk about that. We'll also discuss the White House thinking it may have found its Delcy Rodriguez for Iran, basically a new leader they are looking at, a parliamentarian leader in Iran they think they can work with. But will this guy actually work with them? That's the big question, of course. Here. And half a week later, over in Illinois, J.B. Pritzker is finally breaking his silence about a college student who was tragically murdered by an illegal alien last week. He has said nothing about it, zero. But his office put out a statement finally last night in which they did what? Blamed Donald Trump for politicizing the issue. We'll talk about that as well as sanctuary cities in this specific situation. And lastly, the DNC's money woes continue. What does that mean for the midterms? What does it mean for 2028? Republicans just totally out fundraising Democrats by far, 7 times, I think, when it comes to
just at the DNC.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. At the DNC, for sure. But before we jump in, guys, it looks like I'm not the only one now recovering from a cold. Listen to Sean. Sean, say hello to the crowd today, if you can.
Good morning. Good morning.
Oh my gosh, you sound like you're 85. You sound like you're 85.
I slept like I was 85. Although I was comfortable. I will say that. We'll get to that later. I was comfortable.
Is it like a sore throat, or is it just you can't talk? The voice is just gone.
No, this is actually, I think I'm on the, I know that sounds weird to say, but I'm on the, I got really, like, I think the allergies kicked in last night.
Oh yeah.
And it was just, so, I mean, I actually think I'm getting through this quick. This is just the final stage of denial and grief.
It's literally 80 degrees over the weekend, and now we're back at 30 degrees. I'm in a cashmere sweater like 2 days later. I thought I was putting these sweaters away for the season. Okay. I had like packaged them
fancy.
Up. And then, don't get me wrong, I got these on sale for $20 a piece. So there you go. But Dan, New York, you're doing fine. You're not sick yet, luckily.
I mean, someone in our house is always sick, but yours truly is just, no excuses. Play like a champion. Just show up.
Just to be clear, for the record, I don't get sick. I have allergies. There's a big difference. I'm not sick.
Okay. Whatever. You still sound like you're 85.
This is the Iranian allergy. That's what it is.
Okay. So, but what can you do?
I'm allergic to winning, and we've been winning so much.
But here's the question. Can you call or go online to allfamilypharmacy.com to help with your allergy situation? Dan?
Okay, that's right. Well, if you're busy, like you're doing a show on YouTube and you just, don't have time to get to the pharmacy when most of them usually open, at least here in New York City, at 9 a.m., what better thing than go to allfamilypharmacy.com? As we like to say, you just fill out a short form. A medical doctor will review it, assuming that the prescription is necessary. They will send it to you directly, right to your doorstep. You can get antibiotics, or, in Sean's case, maybe he needs some pollen or seasonal allergy medication. But All Family Pharmacy, it is a great website, a great solution to a problem that drives a lot of people nuts of having to go down to your local pharmacy. So go to allfamilypharmacy.com/huddle, allfamilypharmacy.com/huddle, and use code Huddle10 to get 10% off your order today.
Come on.
Awesome. Thanks to All Family Pharmacy. Just to dive in, it's funny, when you were talking, I realized I didn't actually pull the daybook for this. So I'm pulling it up on my phone right now.
I was a little surprised we went there that soon, but that's okay.
Okay, let's look at the daybook. 10 a.m. First Lady Melania Trump delivers opening remarks to the Fostering the Future Together Global Coalition Summit at the State Department. I'm not sure that I know much about that.
If you saw the Melania movie, you would.
Oh, zing. I would like to see the Melania movie. Is it still
streaming on Amazon right now?
Is it? Okay, no, but the question is, do I have to pay for it, or is it part of my Prime package?
It's part of your Prime package.
Oh, okay, great. Maybe that's my weekend watch. Okay. 1:30, President Trump participates in a swearing-in ceremony for Mark Wayne Mullen. There you go.
Hey, just can I needle your former colleague? You said it correctly, Rachel. He participates. Politico said that he'd be swearing him in. The president doesn't swear in officials. I know it's a technicality, but Politico loves facts and not information. So I just wanted to let him know.
Listen, you can needle them all you want. No love lost there. So 2:30, Speaker Johnson addressing the Hill and Valley Forum. This is the defense and tech industries. The Supreme Court's going to hear oral arguments on whether the U.S. can reject asylum seekers at ports of entry.
I will say yesterday we talked about the hearing that they were going to have on mail-in ballots postmarked prior to Election Day, received after. Sure sounded like they were skeptical of Mississippi's arguments. I have a feeling there may be.
Meaning, right, that they're siding with Trump and the RNC.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So does this mean, so that would mean that any ballots received after Election Day are not counted, even if they're postmarked before?
So Election Day would end at whenever the state delineates voting ends, 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9, whatever. That's it. Anything received. Now, Sean made the point, how do you carve out the military? Like, this is going to be fascinating. And of course, it just has to be noted that Donald Trump did vote by mail in a Florida House State Senate, I think, election here a week or two ago. Just the irony cannot be lost.
No. So can I just look? I know that your side loves saying that. There's a big difference. We are not against absentee ballots and absentee voting when there's an excuse. What the Dems have done with no excuse mail-in balloting is not absentee voting.
Hold on. Your definition of a legit excuse and somebody else's definition. I mean, for all the people, again, I go back to in Florida, traditionally, Republicans ran up margins because all the people who, move around and spend their summers out of the state, who maybe don't come back until after Election Day, historically, mail-in ballots were a huge part of the Florida game plan. But nevertheless, of course, there could be massive corruption someday, somehow.
I want to add one more thing to the daybook here, because I actually was just listening to CNN on my way downstairs, and they were talking about this. Do you know that Marco Rubio is going to be testifying today in a trial against a former congressman, David Rivera, who apparently is accused of lobbying U.S. officials on behalf of Venezuela without basically registering, right? They were roommates. He's going to be testifying on behalf of the prosecution. This is really rare that you would see a cabinet official in sitting down and testifying. And I think CNN said there were a couple other top officials. I think they said Kellyanne Conway is also going to be testifying. And there was one other person I can't remember, but truly fascinating. There will be no cameras for that, or will there?
Who knows?
Who knows?
I mean,
anyway,
they're not
anything wrong.
subjects.
I should say
witnesses.
Rubio did not do anything wrong, but just super fascinating. Okay. Pardon me. Let's jump into our conversation. But before we do, once again, standard protocol here. Everybody go to YouTube and subscribe to our channel. If you're more of a listener rather than a watcher, you want to take us on your morning run, go to Apple Podcasts. You can follow us there. You can find us on Spotify, wherever you go. You want to take us to the car on the way in.
We're on Friendster, MySpace, everywhere.
MySpace. Does that even exist anymore?
Oh, absolutely. I use it all the time.
You're a liar. Now this is where you're pulling my finger here, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Where is? Sorry, I'm just pulling this up, guys. I'm a little disorganized this morning. All right, let's jump into Iran. So, the big question right now is there a deal or no deal? Or maybe the question should be, are there talks or no talks? And I do have to admit that I found some of this narrative yesterday a bit silly, because the president, came out. He said he's pushing pause to give these talks with Iran time. He said they're getting close to some sort of peace deal. Iran comes out and says, oh, there's no talks happening. And the media ends up sort of listening to Iran, our foreign adversary, on this. News comes out, I think, a few hours later that Turkey, Egypt, and Pakistan are indeed sort of passing messages back and forth between Iran's foreign minister and the U.S. and have been actually for a couple of days. But Dan, you said in our text.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
I thought I missed something there. So Trump was.
No,
right.
Because what they were not talking about were contours of a deal. Well, no. Well, let's get into this. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm going to come to you on that, Sean, because I'm sure you have some media criticism on that. But I want to start with Dan first, because he said that with all this sort of back and forth, what it really underscores is that people can't trust one another, that there's not a lot of trust right now. Dan, what did you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, and this is not, Trump derangement syndrome, that this is just kind of Trump's strategies and tactics, which is he tosses red balls out, right? He does this oft masterfully to kind of redirect conversations to get people off of a kind of negative set of headlines and onto a more favorable terrain. And so when Trump announced what he did yesterday morning, everybody in the kind of around the world started scrambling. Markets, oil immediately came down. The Dow, which was going to open way down, shot straight back up. The Israelis then kind of came out and said, well, we're aware for the last few days that there's been some back channel talk, but we were not aware he was going to do this. The Iranians come out and say, we've had no direct or indirect conversations, which again, and then we hear that there is a specific figure, this parliamentary leader, who then comes out and says, no, I've not been privy to any of this, again, direct or indirect. The markets then started kind of going back down. Oil started going back up. And so the bottom line is there is some skepticism because Trump has made, we have to be honest, totally contradictory statements during these 4 weeks, right? Now you could say it's strategic. It's kind of keeping people off balance. It's you can't predict them. And there's an element of strength in that. But you also then have to say the downside is what is actually going on. And I think that's where we don't know. And in war, you don't know everything. But it sounds like there were conversations about beginning to have conversations. And that's good. But Trump said we've had great conversations and we're going to give them more time to play out. That, seems to be a slightly over-optimistic reading.
The problem though with it is like the coverage wasn't nuanced like that. Like, oh yeah, the president says they're great talks. Well, right now it's talks about talks. They just went out there and said like nobody's talking to anyone. 5 sources say there are no conversations between the US and Iran, when in fact, like we've never negotiated directly with Iran. Like even in
no, that's not true at all, Rachel. Before the war, we talked directly to them multiple times.
There, but like historically speaking, a lot of times we do go through adversaries when we're trying to strike deals with Iran, right? I mean,
no.
Sean, jump in on this.
I mean, no, the last 15 years we've talked directly. Go back to the Obamas. But I mean, that's just not true.
Frankly, I don't think it even matters. I mean, the bottom line is, one, think about this. The idea that you could know who someone's talking to in the sense that, like, you could have a conversation. If someone said, I'm having a conversation with government officials in the United States, it could be the president, it could be administration folks, it could be House, Senate, governors. For the media to come out and reflexively say, I've talked to 5 sources, as if 5 people constitute the entire Iranian apparatus, is insane. We now know that those talks have gone back and forth with the speaker of the Iranian parliament. And, oh, by the way, there's even further planning to potentially have a meeting in Islamabad this weekend. Like, this is actually a lot more. Now, whether the president was a little optimistic in describing it, who knows? Maybe an aide said, hey, Mr. President, we passed some stuff along to the speaker of the parliament. He was optimistic. He felt good about this. For the president to express optimism is absolutely fine. I mean, again, the media TDS to reflexively believe the Iranian regime tells you everything. For Christian Welker sits on Meet the Press every Sunday and says to every single Republican guest, without evidence, and then takes the word of the Iranian regime full. I mean, the U.S. media has no shame in the sense that they are literally swallowing the whole of what the Iranian regime, and it turns out that they're wrong once again. And no backpedaling, no apology. It's just, it probably wasn't as much as they said it was.
And by the way, the Iranian regime that just very quickly, Dan, that lied about killing protesters too, right? I mean, so I'm sorry, continue, Dan.
Well, no, I mean, that's just, it's not, that's just not true and not fair. I mean, this is the problem when your own administration, Sean, has Trump had contradictory messages in the just since Friday?
Sure.
Okay. So,
but again, as I said the other day, when you have different audiences. So sometimes he's speaking to Iran, sometimes he's speaking to the American people. But what does that have to do with the American media lying about what the president said?
They didn't lie. The problem
is
with Trump. Well, you and I are going to disagree on this.
Dan, in your defense,
Trump was out over his skis yesterday. No one is debating. The question is, to what extent was he over his skis? So the media goes scrambling to say, okay, the president has said something. We know he has a history of embellishment. We know he has a history. If you want to be charitable and say he says different things to different people, fine. Again, fine. So then the media's job is to try to find out what is actually true and what is not BS being shoveled to us to take out. And Sean, that does happen. Both administrations do it. And when a Democrat does it, it's like, well, you got to get to the bottom of it. They're clearly lying about this. The fact is Trump does shiny red balls. And that's just a fact.
But you're hold on. That has you're turning it back onto what Trump says and does, whether or not the media lied. They did. That's a fact. They said that he wasn't having conversation. We know that that's demonstrably false. He was. So
Trump hasn't. We've passed on stuff to third parties, but there's no substance to it.
That doesn't matter.
Well, but we don't even know that there's no substance to it, right? I mean, like,
that's not what the intermediaries say this morning.
Well, let's and by the way, Sean, you had mentioned that there could be some talks this weekend. I think I saw a headline that JD Vance might be part of this at some point. Isn't he? Is it anyway?
So again, according to reports this morning, the exchange was, would you talk? That is
apparently
where will you talk? We would talk. We might talk. Where might the
and
talks
also
occur?
some very clear terms about what there were 5 conditions that were laid out, including not enriching any further uranium.
Correct. And the Iranians, according to the reports, that has not been addressed whatsoever. Right.
But those were the predicate for the talk, Stan. It wasn't just, hey, do you want to meet? It's here's what we would be discussing. Are you good with that?
All right. Well, let's move on to the administration eyeing this parliamentary speaker. I'm going to bungle his name. Muhammad Bagher. Is it Ghalibaf? Okay, so possibly negotiating partner. They're hoping to make this guy the new, like I said, Iran version of Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela, basically somebody who's friendly to us and will do what we want. The president was also asked yesterday who would control Kark Island, and he said something along the lines of maybe me. Maybe there's shared benefit here. But like that is obviously easier said than done. We don't even know if this guy is cooperating at this point, it sounds like. So Sean, my question to you is like, what do they get by naming this guy? Is this are they trying to signal like, okay, if you elect this guy as your next supreme leader,
they already have supreme leaders.
What's the admin doing in putting this name out there?
I mean, look, here's the bigger problem that I have. It's not so much like in Venezuela, it worked. You maintained the regime. Delcy Rodriguez stepped up and played ball. I think you might have a bigger problem in Iran. I mean, there's fundamentally the people in Iran don't like any of them. I mean, and I think, frankly, if they could topple the whole thing, they would. I think it's a little trickier of a situation. And I think the problem is, and this is not my wheelhouse, but I don't get the sense in Iran that you just get to pick somebody and then they go, okay. I don't further believe that it's not just that one person. Their sort of system of operation is a lot more disparate. So the question is, does that person get buy-in? If you cave to the United States, it may not be the United States and Israel to take you out. It may be your own regime, your own people to take you out.
Well, that's what I was wondering is like, did they just put a target on this guy's back, especially if he's not already
again, it's so hard because this guy is saying, no, I'm not, right? So maybe he's lying for the reasons you just said. We haven't really addressed the fact that Israel's response yesterday was fascinating. I texted you guys over the weekend to be a fly on the wall in Netanyahu's office the last 96 hours because the Israelis did not stop bombing yesterday infrastructure sites, energy sites. The Israelis didn't really like what Trump had to say yesterday, but they respectfully stayed a little. They didn't criticize. They just made it known we're not aligned. And I go back to always follow the money. The market sure seem to be now turning south again. So it's wild. It's wild. It's wild. It's wild.
All right, guys, let's move on to DHS because we got some news on this overnight. So after 5 weeks, it sounds like the good news is that lines might be getting better very soon in time for spring break. TSA agents, we've talked about them on this show. They're they're busting it, working for free. And a lot of these people live paycheck to paycheck, make between $40,000, $50,000 a year. They're going to get paid finally. But I will say on the other hand here, go ahead. Were you saying something or was that?
I don't. I still don't believe this deal. I mean, I think this deal is tenuous. 100%.
I want your take. Well, let me first just fill people in. So basically, a bunch of Senate Republicans went to the White House yesterday. They met with President Trump. And the purpose of this meeting was to try to get him to accept something that, by the way, like I said at the top, Democrats have sort of been pushing for a while, which is this notion of carving out ICE enforcement, funding DHS completely. So TSA will get paid. And they're going to try to fund ICE through a reconciliation bill, which Sean and I have talked about on the show. Is a very heavy lift given their slim majorities and the fact that this is a midterm year. The president initially said, no, I'm not going to do that. But they got him to commit to it by saying they're going to try to tuck the SAVE Act into this reconciliation bill, which, by the way, will get struck by the parliamentarian, which we've also talked about on this show. So, Sean, what, you don't think this is a done deal? That's really interesting. Why?
No way. Not even close.
Yeah.
A couple of things. First of all, they're also going to tuck in the DOD supplemental into that. I mean, so you have two issues here. One, I'll start backwards. Getting a reconciliation package that both the House and the Senate would agree to. And here's the problem, and Dan knows this firsthand. Every lobbyist in DC is going to be like, it's Christmas time, baby. And I'm going to stick an ornament on that tree. Yeah. When you do a reconciliation package like this, like the last one, it's massive. And so getting the two sides to agree what's going to go in and what's going to stay out is going to be massive.
Yeah.
The second problem, and this is where the fundamental, and you notice is Katie Britt was the one who ran out and said, we have a deal. And John Thune, who would love a deal more than anybody, pumped the brakes and said, not so fast.
Yep.
This is the notion of carving out an agency is such bad precedent. I mean, this is going, I think, frankly, if I were a Democrat, I'd be careful of this too, because if you ever take it back, agency by agency, when it comes time for a probe season, this is where Republicans are going to say, this is how Democrats handled it. This is, maybe we get there, but I'm still not convinced that all Republicans are going to be on board. Yep. And I've talked to a lot of people, and Dan probably have better intel. The folks that I'm talking to are insistent that Democrats actually like not having a deal. Like they don't ever want to have to vote for anything for ICE.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I'm very skeptical of this. I'm not saying it can't happen.
Well, and Trump didn't come out and say there is a deal. So that's the other thing. He did not come out and explicitly say, I'm backing the great Katie Britt's, compromise. Every Republican needs to be a good soldier and vote for this.
Right.
And in fact, you had some Republicans saying they're waiting for a smoke signal from the Vatican, so to speak, about where Trump really is.
Right.
And so I do think it is an attempt by Katie Britt and others Republicans to create momentum, to kind of synthetically create this sense of something's going to happen. Democrats are just going to sit back and wait. Because again, if you're a Democrat, you've gone from, our 10 demands are the Republicans saying crazy, never, hell no, whatever. Then it became, okay, we could accept 3. Then it became, we could accept 5. Then it became, you're basically down to masks. At this point, that is all you're really down to.
Yeah.
So they see no reason right now to compromise today.
Yep.
Again, people can say that's insane.
Sure.
As some people pointed out to me, show me a single poll that shows we're losing this shutdown.
Yeah.
And they're right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I think, Democrats are as dug in as ever right now. And I agree with you, Sean, in terms of this being terrible precedent for funding in the future, because, the minority is always going to try to carve up an agency that they don't want to fund or attach certain policies. But I guess my question is, do you think it's going to be the president that ultimately kills this and says, we're not doing this? Or
he's going to watch the conference.
Well, I think it's a little bit of a back and forth. He's going to see where the ball is going. Are they on board? And I'm not convinced from my conversations yesterday with some of these folks on the Hill that Republicans want to go there. I mean, just they're very concerned about what this means if you start carving out stuff. Plus, here's the problem. You keep part of the approach process, part of the reason they do these, they call them omnibus bills, minibus bills. They tie everything together because you get some of the crappy stuff that no one wants to vote for,
Right.
together with some of the stuff that the other party wants to vote for. And so you all jump off the cliff together.
Right.
We've now isolated. This is the biggest strategical blunder on the Republican side, is they've isolated the one thing that we want, the Dems don't want. And so, I mean, like at the end of the day, to Dan's point, they're like, we don't need to vote for this. Like, you guys carry the water. I mean, barring some exit.
And by the way, in a reconciliation bill, you need to offset everything.
Oh, that's
so
easy.
now, well, hold on. If you have $200 billion in funding for the war, let's say, I don't know what they're going to ask for ICE, another 25, 30 billion. Democratic ad makers are going to tee this up, right? They're talking about cutting healthcare more. We know from every single piece of data, healthcare is going to be an issue in the fall. So now you're going to say, ICE is unpopular right now. It just is. So they're cutting your healthcare for more ICE funding. They're cutting your healthcare to have more for, Tehran. Again, you can say that's crazy. It's munitions. It's everything. This is not going to be an easy vote for Republicans. It's not going to be an easy lift.
Well, that assumes that it even can pass. I mean, it's still just very difficult, like very, very difficult. I guess if they don't try to add healthcare into it, but then again, they're going to have to find those offsets. So they're going to have to do some sort of maybe healthcare policy too. My question when I was sort of reading this was like, were Republicans clear with the president that even though they're going to tuck the Save America Act into a reconciliation bill, if they go this route, like there's no way it's going to be included. Like it's going to get struck because you cannot put
unless they try to take part of it.
Well, I'm not sure they're trying to trick him because
Well, no, I mean, I think the issue is that from everything I've read this morning is that there are pieces of it that they think the parliamentarian may approve. So some victory is better than no victory.
What pieces?
So what you would do is so it has to have a
revenue offset.
Revenue offset. So what you could do is claim that there's money that's being sent to the states for election security, for election enhancements, et cetera. And it's sort of like the highway trust fund. You tie. So there's no law that says that the drinking age has to be 21. It's just that they basically tie the transportation funding to to making your
state safer,
your state age limit, right? So the states do it to get the money. So you just start tying all the funding to, you must do the following to get it. You must ensure that there's voter ID, There is a way to make the nexus financial and funding tied. So you might not get 100, but you could get probably 80%.
Don't forget, the other option is you overrule the parliamentarian. Parliamentarian is not the final. I mean, it's a process, but you could always say, thanks for your opinion. We're not going to.
Oh, and just to be clear, when Dole was majority leader, there was the parliamentarian Dove didn't rule the correct way, and they fired him.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
it's hard for me to see this Senate Republican conference doing that, but we'll see.
You know what? If you're looking at losing the majority and your base turnout is not there, you may make the calculation.
No, not John Thune, man. I just don't see it.
You know what? Majority Leader Thune's better than ex-Senator Thune. I mean, at some point, you make the calculation, whatever.
Not Dan threatening the majority.
Oh, it's not me.
All right. Excuse me. Let's move on to our next topic. We got a new 2028 New Hampshire poll by
Who
St.
doesn't
Anthem.
love New Hampshire polls?
Yes, by St. Anthem College for 2028. Looking pretty good for Pete.
Well, there's a lot of movement on both sides here. We're
gonna look at it. Let's look at. Okay. Well, let's start. Should we start with the Dem side?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yep.
Okay.
Obviously.
Can we go back one more? There it is. Okay. Pete Buttigieg, at 29%, followed by Newsom at 15% and AOC at 10%. Harris way down to 6%. Let's just start there with Dems. Thoughts on that, Dan?
Well, the fact that Gavin Newsom's dropped 9 points from their last poll. I mean, that we've talked here a lot about Newsom and Harris and AOC. We've talked about whether the kind of Shapiro, Brashear, even Rahm, and obviously JB Pritzker. But, the name we haven't spent a lot of time on, although he's been subject to a Politico profile and I think a New York Times profile, is it the Atlantic profile, is Mayor Pete, who continues to be out there. He doesn't have a day job, so to speak. He's, on almost any podcast that'll have him, any show that will have him. And there he is, at least in this poll, sitting 14 points, above the rest of the field. And he gained 1 point in the last month.
Can we pull up the poly market for the Dem side, and then we'll come back to this for the Republican side? Okay, yeah, you can see it's hard for me to see on the screen here, but Gavin Newsom declining. I mean, what do you attribute that to, Dan? Like, are people just like kind of sick of his shtick? Is it getting old, or are other people, finding ways to distinguish themselves like Pete?
Yeah, well, look, I think it's a little bit of all of the above, which is he had a great end of last year because he had something he was fighting for, which was redistricting. He had a set of events. Now it's harder for him to break into the news, to have some sort of fresh piece of chum to throw out there, whereas others, have kind of had little moments. We talked about JB Pritzker last week. Kamala Harris has still, continues to churn out there. So, look, this stuff's going to move all around. But I think the bottom line is, for everybody who says, oh, it's definitely Gavin Newsom, or, oh, it's definitely Kamala Harris, it's going to swing around. And Pete Buttigieg is going to be a player. He just is. At least for the next year or 2 years. Sorry.
He might be declining, but he's still leaps and bounds. Well, not leaps and bounds, but three times the next person.
Look, he's run before. He is comfortable talking to anybody. He is comfortable before any audience. Like, he's out there. I mean, he's got some assets and some skills that he'll bring to it. He's got all sorts of liabilities, as everybody on this list does in both parties. But we'll see. But just
I've always I go. It was funny. I wrote a book, Radical Nation, at the beginning of the Biden administration, where I said I believe that he is going to be the guy, and that was because he sort of fits the perfect building blocks of what the Democrats want. It's like somebody who has enough check the boxes. He is gay, but he served in the military. He's got all these right things. I do think that, unfortunately, we still have a bias against short people, which I'm working very hard to fix. The reality is that I said this earlier, at least the people that I'm talking to, New Hampshire will be in the top 4 or 5 states for the Democratic Party. This is good news for Pete Buttigieg. To know that you're going to be early. I mean, New Hampshire doesn't have a big black population. That's his Achilles heel. So he can score a big win if it's not first or second. But if you're Gavin Newsom in particular, that's got to worry you, because you're seeing it both in the poly market and in that New Hampshire poll, that you're moving in the wrong direction, and that Pete Buttigieg isn't tied with you. He's double you. That's a problem. Yeah. And Buttigieg is doing it the old fashioned way, just grinding away, going from meeting to meeting, podcast to podcast. And so, look, I think he is somebody to be reckoned with.
Yeah. Let's go back to that New Hampshire poll and look at the GOP side. Okay, here we go. Vance, 40. Go
back to that, please.
Yeah. There you go. Vance at 46%, down 11 in New Hampshire. Rubio at 27% now, plus 18. Surprising, Sean, or not so surprising? I mean, we know you feel confident that it's going to be Vance, but what do you?
Well, and by the way, can I just add, because it says Ron DeSantis is at 5, and Ron DeSantis yesterday, I think it was on the Sean Hannity new podcast.
Yes,
did not rule out. In fact, quite the opposite. Kind of leaned in a little bit to he may run again in 28, which is just
Right. I think that DeSantis, I think in politics, you have to go when you go, because he doesn't have anywhere else to move right now. Yeah. I also think what's missing from that list, we've talked about it a lot, is Ted Cruz. Mm-hmm. The question is, now, all that being said, I still think this is literally Vance's to lose.
Yeah, I agree. Let's pull up the poll.
Can I ask a question? Sean, does this stuff reach Trump?
So that it's a great question. I think somebody somewhere will say something. So like maybe it's the veranda there at Mar-a-Lago or whatever, but somebody who is trying to potentially sow.
Yeah.
I think there's a decent chance that it comes up in somebody's conversation or whatever.
I was gonna say, I mean, but he also elicits it, as we've talked about on the show. Like he had, and there's been some great reporting about him asking people Rubio or Vance, and it sounds like, you know, when he's with the donor crowd, at least a lot of them are saying Rubio. The question is, like, you know, how much does he listen to that, right? Versus, you know,
Well, let
the
me
other
ask you
guy
guys one other thing. So traditionally, Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, does not get involved in domestic politics, right? You just traditionally, that's not something you do. Sean, you're running a campaign. Let's say John Cornyn is the nominee in Texas. Okay. Do you ask Marco to come down and campaign for you? Do you ask him to come at a Trump, Reagan, Lincoln dinner?
You might, but you would not in this cabinet go do a fundraiser for anybody that's not cleared.
Yeah. But I'm saying, like, so my question for both of you is, Vance is going to be out there. He's the chair of the Republican National Committee the finance chair. He's obviously going to be out there. What happens if candidates start coming for Marco? Let's say you're in a swing House seat and you need some Latinos. So the southern border there in Texas, the Rio Grande, where they want to try to pick up some of those seats. And hey, we'll give you JD. No, we'd like Marco.
I'm surprised to hear that.
It's a two-way street. So so I used to do this when I was at the NRCC and worked with the political department. The thing is, they'll tell you, here's who's available.
Okay.
Right now, there's other, meaning like, because you're right, the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor don't generally do political events.
Right.
But Marco is a, former House Speaker in Florida, senator, and
right.
So I could see a world where it's a personal favor, one off.
Okay.
I also, but the other factor is, does Marco want to do it? Right? Does he say, hey, I don't think it's a good look for me, or I don't want to do it?
So this is why I ask. He keeps saying, hey, if my friend JD runs, I'm no way. At what point do you say, like, look, when Barack Obama showed up in Iowa, suddenly people are like, that's really interesting. At what point, like, if you're Marco, I would think any sort of hire, any sort of like, sure, I'll come to be the special guest at the New Hampshire, gubernatorial, breakfast. Do you even at all take advantage of this?
He should, because he can clearly help the party. It's a question of, obviously he has time. It's a time thing, right? Like, he's got how many jobs? 10, 15?
I saw him the other day. I joked with him. I said, sorry about all the jobs. And he looked at me and he said, I only have 2.
He's probably getting sick of those jokes. I wonder what he thinks of all those funny memes of him.
I don't think he's got as funny as I did.
But look, he would be an asset. Like, there's no doubt he would be an asset for Republicans.
Of course.
Yeah. Of course you would. Look, like I said, I think it's sort of like a hypothetical. I don't see him rushing to the guy's busy enough. I don't see him wanting to do it. And to Dan's point, I don't know that you'd want to do it just because of the speculation that would.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Let's move on to our next topic here. Okay, so Pritzker breaking his silence on this murder. Some of you may have heard about this, but about a week ago, there was this Loyola University freshman, 18 years old. She was killed by a Venezuelan national, illegal alien, while she was strolling along the pier with her friends trying to snap a picture of the Northern Lights. We didn't hear anything from the governor's office. I mean, it sounds like a Chicago Tribune specifically reached out and tried to get comment. But last night they finally put out a statement in which they blamed the president for politicizing this. Obviously, Republicans, they're latching onto this. Fox News had this big story about this reaction, given that Pritzker was one of the first Democrats out the gate, when we were talking about Renee Good and Alex Preddy, right? And here he just says nothing. Dan, I guess, let's just start there. At what point, is it starting to get to the point that if you say something negative against an undocumented immigrant, that you hurt yourself with the base? Why not say something here?
No, I mean, look, it was fascinating because I'll be honest, I didn't know about this until I saw the Fox News story, and it was the lead of foxnews.com this morning. I think the other interesting thing is the Lake and Riley Act now kicks in, and they are silent on whether or not they will hold the accused until the federal officials, and then hand over to federal officials to proceed with being deported. I think the bigger issue is tragically, there will likely be more events like this. And when you have people like the governor of Illinois and the governor of Pennsylvania, the governor of California, governor of Kentucky, this is still a radioactive issue in the party, which is, to what extent do you recognize when someone is harmed, in this case murdered, by an illegal immigrant versus just they're harmed in general? And then how do you cooperate? Right? Again, the Pritzker administration isn't saying we won't hand the person over, right? Because I think they probably will. But the optics of this within the party, of any sort of cooperation with ICE. It is this is where we will see. Pritzker had a good week getting a Senate nominee through. Now we're going to see how nimble he is with national lights starting to focus on a parochial issue. How do you do now? And silence is probably not the best answer, because you let the vacuum get filled.
The story says that there's this Illinois law that the Trust Act, okay, it's a sanctuary city, bars police from sharing information with immigrant agents or handing people over. Sean, Republicans will obviously seize on this to go after him. Not that they look at this guy as much of a threat at this point, but not a good look for him.
Yeah.
Well, it's not.
Dan thinks he's more of a threat, perhaps. Yes.
But it's not that he's not going to be. It's not that he's going to be the nominee. But I'll let Sean go. But you keep your guns on the horizon at anyone who pops up, because you don't want to let them build momentum. I mean,
I would just say, look, JB Pritzker, it's sad that somebody dies, gets killed, and you feel you can't comment because you don't want to anger your base. The person was killed because somebody was in this country illegally because of these policies. And the idea that you now go, well, I can't comment or grieve for them because of that, and it takes getting hounded by the media, is a really sad state. It's a pattern. We're seeing it here in Virginia. Abigail Spanberger has gone all in on defending the rights of people not in this country illegally. It is, I actually, there's something that I never thought I'd saw. Like this, the idea of the defense of people who aren't even here. The number one and only job of any official, whether you're a mayor or a president, is to defend the people you represent. And the idea that has now become a political idea, football of like, I can't say anything about these people because they were killed by somebody that I don't represent, but I've got to defend them, is a really sad state for the country.
Let's very quickly move to 5. So the RNC continues to run circles around the DNC and fundraising, 7-1 advantage with cash on hand. Apparently, hold on, let me pull these numbers up. Oh, yes. The RNC ended the month with $109 million compared to the DNC's $15.9 million. These numbers are obviously just terrible for the DNC. Dan, we've talked about Ken Martin in his leadership before. He doesn't have much fundraising prowess. Has there been any discussion in the party with trying to pair him with someone like a Nancy Pelosi, who does have these sort of contacts, can raise a boatload of money, and doesn't have a lot to do right now since she's not speaker? Or at this point, is it kind of throw in the towel because we're not going to fix this problem right now?
No, I think they're not throwing in the towel. There are people talking. Some of it's just over, kind of the gossip around town. Some of it's a little more serious than that. There are some people that are, thinking of things and talking to certain people without betraying exactly what's going on. But I think, look, it's not just that. The DNC debt is greater than their cash on hand. So, I mean, it is the idea of meeting your payroll, just that basic fact, let alone how do you disperse money. Look, I think there's lots of conversations. The DCCC, the DSCC are doing well. They're at basically parity, slightly more, slightly less in a given month than their opponents. The outside group money is starting to crank back up. I think that's one of the better signs the party has seen in the last few months. Is a year ago, you had major donors literally fearful of being investigated, if they wrote to an outside group. Now that fear is a little less. I think the sense of, maybe taking the House back, maybe the Senate is creating momentum. Talking to somebody who runs a pretty big group, they feel pretty good right now about where fundraising is. I think the thought is they can compensate a little, but when you think about the next 3 years, this is not sustainable. Like, it's just Ken Martin's fundraising ability is not sustained, or lack thereof is not sustainable. So what is the solution? I think they're still trying to work out. And then, of course, it's not, you got to get him to agree, and you got to get the members around him to agree.
And how long is the term for him? Just 2.
I think it's 2.
Just 2 years.
The bigger,
they can oust him after the midterms and replace him pretty quickly for 2028. Sean, go ahead.
So there's a couple things. One, Dan mentioned this, but the burn rate of a national party, at least I haven't been there in 8 years, is about $8 to $10 million between salary. You have to put postage on your direct mail, fundraising, all that kind of stuff. So they basically have enough money on hand to run for a month and a half. What's not in that story is they are still underwater. They have that much debt still. The bigger issue isn't even just the national party, but what I think is keeping the Republicans really in the fight for the midterms is the Trump super PAC is somewhere in the area of about $400 million. And there's nothing on the left that's the equivalent. So I think if it wasn't for the money, I think our percentage of maintaining the majority would be a lot different. But when you take that money, ostensibly call it $500 million, and put it up against, let's even give the Democrats the benefit of the doubt of, the DNC is 15. Well, I'll round it up to $100 million for them. That's still a 5-to-1 disparity running in, 25 districts in 6 states. That's a boatload of cash. The one thing the Democrats do have going for them is that their candidates are actually doing very well on the individual. Right. Hard money is king. It helps you buy your ads a lot cheaper. So all that being said, I will say that this is what is the saving grace for Republicans right now.
Here's a question for you.
By the way, it's a 4-year term, not 2.
Oh, it's a 4-year term. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Just confirmed.
Interesting. Well, then maybe there really will be a mutiny against him, because they can't have this one in
No,
2028.
I don't think there's going to be a mutiny again, because again, you got to get the 448 members to agree to I think the issue is, do you layer him? Like, do you bring on the way they did with Ed Rendell back in 2000 to kind of, you bring on a prominent fundraiser, you make them co-chair, you obviously in an ideal world, he would resign, but I think right now the more likely scenario is he's layered.
To go back to something that, Sean, you were just talking about, all the money that Republicans have and all the money like the president has been able to bring in himself. One thing I have heard a lot of Republicans ask privately, and none of them will say this on the record, they want to know when they're going to spend big. When's the president going to make it rain? And I'm reminded of a story I actually wrote. It would have been 2018. I think it was Kevin McCarthy who was getting very frustrated that, they weren't spending enough money, like getting the green light to spend money on House candidates and protecting them. And the president even made a joke about this the other day when he was at the NRCC fundraiser that, I don't traditionally give a lot. But do you think he's going to pony up here? Because
100%.
When is it?
Well, first of all, I think that who knows? There's going to be a little bit on the ground. I've had enough conversations that they are well aware of the importance of maintaining a majority to his legacy, to him not getting impeached, et cetera. So, but we're a year out. I mean, throwing money right now might not be the best example. If I were them, the whole idea of super PAC money, which ostensibly this is you want to wait for the end and help somebody over the finish line. You need them to do their own legwork right now. I mean, and it's early enough in the cycle that I wouldn't be putting a ton of money in. But the president's going to have his money at the end and then jam it, help people over the finish line. They're down 5 or within 2, something like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's take some questions, guys. Okay. Good morning, Mark. Question: Iran claimed its ballistic missiles only go 1,240 miles, but fired 2 at Diego Garcia 2,360 miles away. Has the IC greatly underestimated Iran's capacity in many respects?
Yes, I guess, just to take that at face value. But I think there's 2 things, which is one, the word obliteration is being thrown around a lot, but we keep talking about the missile degrading their missile capabilities, but yet they keep firing missiles. Yeah, I mean, they
Scary.
clearly they got pretty close to getting, based on the trajectory, to Diego Garcia.
Well, also, I mean, I think if you do the math, and Keir Starmer and Macron want to get a measuring stick, maybe they can convert that into meters and kilometers. But Europe should be a lot more concerned than they are now. I understand why President Trump wants their support, because this fight is coming to a neighborhood to you. This does definitely underestimate their capabilities, and I think that's a reality in a lot of these, whether it's North Korea or Iran, that you can only have so much human intelligence, et cetera, in countries where you can't operate freely.
It's fascinating too, because like the media coverage has always kind of gone the opposite way. Like, we say, oh, they're X months away or X years away from getting, this or enriching that. And it's always like, oh, actually, no, it's like 10 to 15 years. Like this takes it in the total opposite direction, if that point makes any sense. Let's take another question. Okay, Ryan, good morning. If the Democrats win the House this cycle, will immediately impeach Trump be a winning strategy in 2028? This is where Dan and I disagree.
Yeah,
well,
no,
I would say you and I both agree that it's not a winning strategy, but you think they will not do it.
I don't. I think there is a lot of conversation within the party, within the congressional leadership, about which investigations will go first, who's going to take the lead. We haven't even talked about the fact that somebody or some people seem to have a pretty good hunch that something was about to happen yesterday morning, because some very large bets came in the pre-market trading that would profit based on what ended up coming out of Trump's Truth Social post a short while later. So I don't think they're going to move to impeach him right away. Now, if they find something really egregious, I don't know. But I do not think it is a good strategy. And I know there are people around Jeffries and Schumer who do not think it is a good strategy to try to impeach Donald Trump.
But the reality is they can't help themselves. They will do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, who else didn't think it was a good strategy to impeach President Trump? Nancy Pelosi, who just fought tooth and nail for 8 months to try to hold that back. And then she couldn't. And you saw what happened and what Trump won. So, and Jeffries, obviously not as strong of a leader as Pelosi herself. So I'm skeptical. I'm with Sean on this. Not to say it's a winning strategy, but I think it will happen. We'll see. Let's take another one. Robert, good morning. Question: which is more of a roll your eyes moment? Trump voting by mail yet again while railing against it, or Parnell trying to be cute with his moves against the press after losing in court?
Yeah, great question.
We can guess your political leanings, Robert.
We actually had we had the court or the journalism in our 5 at one point today. I mean, look, I think it's silly what they're doing. I don't think this will be a permanent thing. I don't think it'll last. I think the bigger issue is just more and more Republicans frustrated with Hegseth. I mean, I know he's not going anywhere, Sean, because Trump loves him, but his goodwill around town continues. I mean, I guess all that matters is Trump, but I mean, no Republican wants to defend this.
I know
you will.
There's two issues here. One is the voting by mail. As I said, big difference. When you are voting absentee and you have a excuse, which is in Virginia, we used to have a list of 11. You certified that you met which one, you were in, so if you worked out of town, which obviously at the time, I think I worked in DC, you could say you worked, you weren't going to be home during business hours, and you just certified that is a completely different deal. 2 weeks of absentee ballots versus where you apply for it, you get it, then sending everybody willy-nilly a ballot, and you don't know that they're even living at I mean, I don't know how we can describe them as even being close to the same. It's ridiculous.
I do want to flag. You're saying that Northern Virginians working in DC is a legitimate excuse for a mail-in ballot?
It said that the law said that if you worked out of the area during business hours, that you could vote absentee. That was the law.
Okay. All right.
But you had like a 2-week window to do it. You applied for it. They sent it to you and you got it. Right. So this was not And I honestly, Dan, I actually love voting in person. So I don't know. I think I might have done it once.
Do you wear the sticker all day?
I not
do.
all day, but
No,
I
I
do
do.
try. I love the sticker. If they don't have it, I'm like, hey, why did I come?
Yeah. Come on now. Yep.
Right.
Okay.
But I will say that I am a big believer in voting in person on election day when possible. But there's a reason that their absentee ballot and mail-in ballot are not the same animal. They're not. There's a big difference between mailing every single person a ballot that didn't request one to an address that you can't confirm that they're getting it at. Anyway,
Well,
they haven't asked for. And the second is, so everyone gets the question. The New York Times sued the Department of War for saying that they didn't want to agree to the criteria to get their credentials. So they weren't given admittance to the building, which is not normal, meaning most government buildings, you can't just walk in if you're the press. That's just not how it works. The DOD, State Department of Defense, and the White House are probably the only ones I'm aware of that issue their own credentials. And so what happened is the New York Times sued and the court ruled that they should get their credentials back. So the Department of War last night announced that they're just going to get rid of everybody and say, great, you can all work out of this annex. And so it's like, I looked at it as a checkmate moment. You got your credentials back, go work down the street in Pentagon City.
I didn't read the ruling, but was it that you can't distinguish, like if you're going to give access to reporters, you can't look at their coverage and decide not to allow them, or was it
more, from the way I read it, it leaned more on the criteria that you can't I guess I'm trying to think of how to nuance this, but basically what the court said is you can't require them to do certain things in their reporting to grant the credential.
Right. So basically, if you're going to give access,
the story per se, but it was saying that can't be the predicate.
I see.
Or so
they just said, okay, then we're not going to have anybody, and you're going to be
right.
So
I do want to say that supporting the New York Times was the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, Fox News, like all these news organizations are support. The New York Times just took the lead on it, but yes.
Yeah, no,
just to be fair to this.
Yeah,
I looked at it as a checkmate moment, which is okay. Well,
we're just not going to have any press. No, I mean, I think that makes sense. I don't.
No one can have any.
I don't think you should. But like, it's one thing to argue, oh, the press doesn't get a right to this. Like, it's a privilege and not a right to get access to this building. It's another thing entirely to say, oh, we're only going to let you in because we like your coverage versus somebody else who doesn't like your coverage. So, anyway, but no, the other thing on this I was going to say is they're just going to keep doing this. I mean, even if they lose, like Hegseth, like this is his MO, right? Like stick it to the media.
Nothing. The difference now, Rachel, is there's nothing to fight. The press can't claim that they have a right to the access, so they've got their building back.
Nobody has the right.
Yeah, right. So there's nothing. I mean, who knows? You can sue anybody for anything these days, but.
Yeah,
I wouldn't, but I don't see I don't see the premise of another lawsuit. Like, what are you going to say? We don't like our workspace. You can't argue that.
I thought I heard this morning that they were talking about going back on this, but I don't know what the premise was.
Initially, the DOD was saying that they were going to appeal the New York Times ruling.
Oh, I see.
But then and they still might.
Yeah.
But the bigger point is that they said, fine, we'll let you all back in, but back in now means working out of an annex, not in the big
I will say that I do not think this will outlast Pete Hegseth. I think they will change this when he leaves. And if you were to walk around Capitol Hill and ask Republicans, they would change the subject. Nobody's going to defend. It's juvenile and ridiculous. It is just juvenile.
I don't think, to your point, Dan, I don't know that they defend it. I don't think that they care, though.
Stand by what I said.
I don't think they care. I don't think they particularly care either, but I agree with Dan. It's super juvenile. Anyway, okay, let's go to another question. And it's fascinating too, because like he can take reporters, like he can take them on, like, but like it's
not on substance all the time.
Okay. To be honest, do people know we are in a shutdown? So much is happening.
Yeah, they do, because they see the airport lines.
Yeah, they're starting to.
Well, it's funny. I talked to somebody yesterday, and I know this is going to sound like my standard, but somebody was telling me, they said, what sucks about this is they said every story that we hear talks about long TSA lines, but they don't say why. And the person was making the case to me that they said it was almost like it's like because of spring break. meaning that in the news coverage that they had been hearing, it's never because it's shut down, because Democrats won't vote for it. You're starting to hear a little bit more, but I get their point. They were like, when you listen to the average story that's on the news, it's about the long lines, and then they forget to say because of why.
Yeah.
I fault Republicans for not hammering this message consistently. I just do. I agree with you, Sean.
One area
It's
where
amazing.
you both agree. Look at that. Look at
Well,
that.
the funny part is I had Ron Johnson on the show yesterday, and I said, he's like, well, the press won't cover it. And I said, respectfully, if you guys showed up at Reagan Airport today with 4 or 5 senators, you'd get all the cameras in the world.
Yeah,
Trust me.
absolutely.
And
100%.
I mean, I get, like, you can't, it's one thing. I get the skepticism on our side to say the media is not going to come, but then at least film it. In this day and age, we don't need NBC there. We need a guy with a video camera to put it on X and to get it out on Instagram, etc.
Oh,
And
they
no
will
offense,
film that.
but conservative media is not really covering it. I mean, your own tribe is more
But
focused
Dan,
on
the problem
feedback.
is, I'm with you on this. But you, if as a leader in the Republican Party, in the Senate, the House, you need to create that moment. There has to
I
be
agree.
something to
I
cover.
agree.
So
I agree.
the idea that when I was on the Hill, we were stunts galore. We'd get on the
course.
House steps, do this. We'd go into gas stations and protested. Like, I feel like it's so defeatist now. We're like, oh, why even bother?
I agree with you. Yep.
All right, guys, we're at time. Sean, what do you got coming up today?
A lot of legal stuff. Alan Dershowitz. We're gonna.
Oh,
break
that's right.
that.
We knew that actually.
Oh, and the funny thing is, I know no one wants to talk about it. I'll probably get hammered for this, but he's always got a lot to say on Epstein, and I haven't talked to him since the Clintons testified. I want to know if he's been asked to do this, but also, like, we just talked about these constitutional questions, whether it's Iran or DHS, press freedoms. There's so much to get to.
All right, guys, we will be back at 8:30, and I think by then we will find out if this deal with DHS is real or not. We'll see. We'll see if Sean and Dan are right that this is not a real thing. So we'll be back tomorrow, 8:30. See you then.